Hi, I'm Chris McCreary. I'm the founder and director of the Northern Ireland Science Festival. You're very welcome to this digital edition of the programme. We're really thrilled this year to have a new partnership with National Geographic Society and the NI Science Festival, which will see 4 explorers from across the world talk about their inspiring research and careers to date. Tonight we're really delighted to welcome a wildlife photographer and research scientist Jeff Kerby, who's going to be in conversation with presenter and broadcaster Greg Foote. We hope you enjoy, and if you do, please make sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe and follow us for more content. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the second event in the National Geographic Explorer series for Northern Ireland Science Festival. The NI Science Festival and National Geographic have teamed up for these brilliant series of 4 events where I get to chat to 4 brilliant explorers who are sharing their inspiring adventures, their research and their stories with me. I am Greg Foote. I'm a science presenter and producer making shows on TV and radio and YouTube and also a couple of podcasts as well. And I'm really chuffed to get this opportunity just to sit and chat face to face with these amazing people. As I mentioned yesterday, lots of people know National Geographic from the TV channel, from the magazine. But of course, there's also the National Geographic Society that has been sharing these stories, has been funding scientists and explorers for a very long time, over 100 years, in fact, and they continue to do so. And anyone who gets funding from the National Geographic Society gets to call themselves a National Geographic Explorer, which is a title I would love to have. That is super cool. Whether they're a scientist, whether they're a storyteller, a conservationist, an educator, or any combination of the above, they're all united in their passion for sharing and protecting our beautiful but fragile planet. Yesterday, I got to chat to marine biologist Dr. Lucy Hawkes. Next week, I'll be chatting to TV presenter and wildlife filmmaker Malika Vaz and also ocean-focused bioengineer Kakani Kataja. Today, though, I'm really excited. I'm in conversation with an award-winning natural history photographer and research scientist, Jeff Kerby. Jeff, hello.
Hello, Greg.
Thanks so much for joining me.
My absolute pleasure.
So the way we're doing these, Jeff, is I'm just going to give you the floor and let you chat for 10-15 minutes about your work, which I'm really looking forward to because it means we're going to get to see some of your amazing photography and videography. And then we'll come back together again and have a natter.
Sounds fantastic. Let's give it a go.
Over to you.
All right, sharing my screen here. And yeah, figured start off with no pictures, just a black screen and a chance to chat in general. So I realized that I'm really drawn to science and photography for the same reasons. There's this special feeling you get when you see or hear something and it makes you stop what you're doing and take a little pause and kind of stand back and go, wait, what? It's something that you'll see like throughout this festival. And it's also a great starting point to think about how photographic storytelling and science can really overlap. And so, for example, this photo I'm about to share has helped me start a lot of conversations. So what we have here is a lot going on. We have empathy, curiosity. It tends to cause a bit of a double take. Maybe you feel other feelings, but most of all, when I share this picture, I get a lot of questions. So the basics are that we're looking at a gelada monkey in the Ethiopian highlands, about to become 2 monkeys. It was taken on assignment for National Geographic. But one of the favorite things I have about this photo, beyond the questions that it raises, is that it's also full of scientific data. It's actually really rare to see a wild birth in any primate species. So the several dozen photos in this series are a really helpful way of answering basic questions about how this process unfolds. It allows for opportunities to make comparisons across species and also give us insights into our own evolutionary story and learn about obstetrics, the study of birth in humans. And so I honestly wasn't thinking about any of that when I took that picture. But with photography, sometimes you just find data in the story. But images also have the power to inspire action. And for instance, a year and a half ago, I was on an expedition in the Kuril Islands. This is archipelago where kind of Russia comes down to meet Japan. But I met this guy. This is Vladimir Burkanov, and he's a conservation scientist focused on marine mammals. And he told us about the ecology and conservation challenges that are facing this region. And more so than anywhere else, he was excited about drones. And I was like, okay, like, cool, I like drones. I use them in my work. But it became incredibly clear why he was so excited. And I thought I'd just share a little bit of video right here. I mean, this is a place that foremost just begs to be seen from the air. So this is a drone image of Tulane Island, and that's what you saw at the very end of that little video. And this is definitely one of those places that makes you go, wait, what? When you show up there, it's insanely loud. There's animals making noises. It smells like something you've probably never experienced before. And at the peak of summer, yeah, you see tens of thousands of seals and sea lions just crowding all over the place. And the conservationists working there need a count of these animals and their pups. And there's not that many of them, and they don't have that much time. So fortunately, drone images can come in here and really help them answer those questions. What used to take many days or even over a week is now something that they can do in a matter of hours. From takeoff to landing, using some drone images and computer software that his students have come up with, they can get an accurate count of every animal on this island just in a really short time period. So for scientists here, drones save time. It's one of their most precious resources that they have. But these images can also inspire. And so I got to go there with this group of very talented filmmakers and photographers and scientists. And we were able to turn Vladimir's story into a short film to help raise funds to continue his conservation work, especially during these really challenging times. And so far, we're about halfway towards raising $1 for every seal that you saw in that image. So so far, so good, but we're still working towards finishing the island there. But so far, I've kind of talked about how photos and science can intersect, whether it's like up close and personal with the monkey or across islands. But what about scientific challenges beyond what a human eye could ever see? And that's kind of a situation we're facing in the Arctic. This is that treeless region in the far north where winters are long and dark and summers are a race for plants and animals to grow really fast and reproduce before winter comes again and tries to kill them. So this is also a part of the world that's warming up faster than anywhere else in the planet. And the consequences of this can be seen by satellites from space. So this is kind of a funky scientific figure, which is just a map that looks down from the North Pole towards this Arctic region where the tundra is. And what it is showing us is that in summer, right now, the tundra is much greener than it was decades ago when satellite images were first collected. And so what I want you to see here is just a pattern. And this pattern has caught the attention of scientists. And this is one of my colleagues, another Nat Geo explorer, Isla Meyer-Smith. It's caught attention of scientists like Isla because this thin green skin on top of the Arctic can also tell us what's happening in the frozen soils beneath it. Soils that could release substantial amounts of greenhouse gases if, for the first time in thousands of years, they began to thaw out and be digested by microbes. So changes in this soil, called permafrost, could impact not only the climate of the Arctic, but of the entire planet. So the challenge that scientists face right now is how to better bridge the gap between kind of the old pixelated imagery from the 1970 satellites and observations that we make on the ground, but only cover so much area. And so this can help us understand how herbivores influence these changes, how tundra fires are reshaping the landscapes, how changing wetlands are playing a part in this. And there's just a lot of complexity here that gets pretty mind-blowing really fast. Fortunately for us, drones, again, are helping scientists overcome some of these gaps. And here's one group I've worked with in Canada, where we use all sorts of different drones to see things that the human eye would miss. So we use special cameras that can map colors beyond what human vision would allow, that can tell us more information about plant health or indicate recent changes in the moisture on the tundra surface to give us clues about what's happening below. We can also use computers to stitch drone pictures together and make extremely accurate 3D maps of landscapes, and then reveal different layers of this information to see how they all relate to one another. This is like taking millions of observations by a human and just doing it over space. And one of the most exciting and final uses I'll bring up is being able to compare changes through time. So here's a huge map of the thawing permafrost that I showed you a picture of earlier. We made this from drone pictures in 2016. So if we zoom in, you can see how this landscape changes over a period of just a few short years. And I'll show you that in a second. But just to give you a sense of scale, we've already zoomed in here. So I'll add a football pitch just to kind of give you a sense of how big we're talking about. So this is a change from one year to the next, the year after, and the year after that. You can lose an entire football pitch, 25 meters tall, of this soil gone just in 4 years. You couldn't see that if you were just staring at it while you were there, but using drones, we can reveal these patterns in a way that is really important. So these images were taken to answer scientific questions, but more and more we're seeing that they can also tell powerful stories beyond the scientific community. And that's at the core of where we're headed next. We're getting together this team to bring together scientists, photographers, and local community members that transform scientific images into stories we'd miss with traditional photography. So photography has taken me on this big circle, from telling stories to gathering data and then back again. But why? Because ultimately it has the power to cause people to pause, to think for a minute, and then ask, wait, like what? And ultimately, we just need more of those conversations.
Jeff, that was amazing.
Cool. Yeah, no, I mean, fun to get to share.
That footage, that photography was stunning.
Oh man, no, that place, like Russia, the arts, all these places, it's like cheating going there as a photographer. Just everything looks good.
Yeah, anyway you point the camera, boom,
yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, just close your eyes and right in pride.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Cool, man.
Oh yeah, that was super cool. I've been I got a drone last year, and I've been kind of experimenting with flying and trying to take some imagery, and you just show it just to the next level. But then how you can add all that tech kind of on top of it to see wavelengths that we can't see, to add in time lapse. There's so much I want to explore with you. But first things first, this is like asking a question of what came first, the chicken or the egg. I appreciate that. But what came first, being a research scientist or the mad passion for photography and videography?
So I was a Russian studies major in university. And then, I just kind of got really interested in science, like behavioral science. And so took a job in Ethiopia to study monkeys without really realizing what that meant. So then I lived on a mountain in Ethiopia for a year. And that's where I got really interested in the photography, because I just had a lot of time on my hands. And so the two kind of came out of the same place. But I started on the pathway towards science and then got really into photography, and then went back into science, and now I'm just a mixed up guy.
It seems to be a pretty good mix, to be fair. Am I right in thinking you spent 5 seasons studying caribou? Was that in Greenland, was it?
Yeah. So I think probably like 4 or 5. I'm trying to remember. 4 is a safer bet, but I think it was 5. But yeah, so I did my PhD studying the interactions between caribou and plants in Greenland.
Were you able to use drone photography during that? Because I can imagine that getting that kind of big, wide global view almost of moving populations would have helped, or was that not a thing at the time?
It really was right on the cusp of when that got started. So that's how I got into drones. I ended up not really using it that much because the tech was really cumbersome. I did a lot of kite mapping where you put a camera on a kite and just drag that all over the place.
Huh.
And then I got involved with the conservation drone guys, and they gave me like a styrofoam airplane that just had a little point and shoot camera you could put in the bottom that I was flying around. But now things are a lot more efficient, and so we've kind of moved beyond just getting the images, which is what I was doing at that time period without really knowing how to analyze it, into making the most of them. So using the tech to turn them into 3D or actually be useful to scientists.
Yeah, I mean now for a couple of £100 or bucks, you can buy a drone that's super easy to fly,
Oh yeah.
4K.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I used to make my own, but now like you can just get one cheaper that's much better. So I've kind of given up on that.
and it was interesting when you were telling us about the counting seals in Russia and how Vladimir and his team have made the computer software to sit alongside it to count.
Yeah.
That's obviously been a huge kind of exponential growth of that sort of skill as well.
Oh yeah, all this open source kind of coding material. So yeah, I mean, we were in this somewhat dilapidated hut on an island covered with screaming seals, and there's a couple people sitting down on computers that were cranking out our code and machine learning to count tens of thousands of animals.
How exciting. I mean, if there are any kind of youngsters watching this who are thinking about, where they could take their careers, or interested in science, or interested in photography, interested in droning, this is this amazing like intersection of all of those worlds.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's also like the deeper I go, the more I realize that having that science background makes these opportunities accessible. Like, I get to go on these because I have experience with drones, or because I have the scientific context, and it really adds a lot to the experience, and it's a pathway for people to follow if they're interested in that.
Okay, I want to get into all of that so much more, but here's a possibly an easy question or a very hard question. Your work has taken you all over the globe. You've you've been in the deserts of Namibia. We've heard about the mountains of Ethiopia, the mountains of East. If I pushed you to choose the place that has made the most lasting impression on you, where would that be?
It would be the mountains of Ethiopia, but there's a couple reasons for that. All of these places are absolutely stunning, and the natural history of these places, but also the people that I've met in all these places have just been incredible. And so that's part of what draws me back to Ethiopia. Is I just spent the longest there, and I got to know the local community really well, and just having that opportunity to build relationships and almost feel like being part of a family where you spend a year living out of a tent, and the people that you're hanging out with there really, they take care of you and get to know you well. And so the combination of getting to know the local community, and just the absolute stunning landscapes combined with fascinating behavior of the monkeys is a hard combination to beat.
I bet. Let's talk about that monkey photo.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. That am I right in thinking that was your first feature story for National Geographic?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting that shot? Because you look like you were very close. Like, how long was your lens? Had you scoped out the area for a really long time? Was that the first time you'd seen a live birth and you just managed to catch it?
Yeah, so I think I had about 400 millimeter on my lens at that point, but it was totally unplanned. I was off following the monkeys around, and there was a wolf in the area. So there's this really rare species of wolf that lives in the Ethiopian highlands called the Ethiopian wolf that sometimes interacts with the monkeys. It'll just hang out in the middle of the group of monkeys and hunt rodents while the monkeys mostly ignore it. So, I mean, as a photographer, it's like, that's an interesting photograph. So I knew there was a wolf around and I was kind of looking to find it. And then kind of the advantage of being a biologist pulled me away from that. I saw this one female monkey walk away from the herd, and there's, several hundred of them together. It's a really interesting species. And I knew that was strange. I was like, females don't walk away from the herd unless they're about to die or something else weird is going to happen. So I stopped what I was doing and I kind of followed her at a distance, and I saw that she went down into this little kind of crevice in the landscape and started to kind of like silently arch her back a bit. And I was like, oh, I know what's about to happen now. And so, yeah, I was really nervous and just kind of quiet, didn't want to disturb her or anything, and just sat there and clicked away. And yeah, she went through and gave birth totally silently and grabbed the kid and walked right back to the herd. So I was glad I didn't mess up my focal length or anything.
Yeah, can you imagine? Well, that just shows experience and calm under pressure, I guess, opportunity. What's the process for any other budding photographers watching, or also just anyone who's interested in this whole world? Did you then approach National Geographic and you said, hey, you commissioned me to go and photo these monkeys and I've got this incredible photo? Or did you approach them cold and go, I've got this amazing photo? And how is that different or similar to how that process works on other occasions? Like, do you have to submit a dozen photos and they choose one? Like, how's that work?
Yeah, it's a long process. So what happened here was science got me started. So I'd spent a year working with the monkeys, taking pretty garbage pictures, to be honest with you. And I remember like coming home and showing my friends and being like, oh, cool, like look at all this stuff I did. And they would get bored really fast. And I was like, you don't understand, it was interesting. So then with a colleague of mine, Vivek, who's another guy that I was working with in Ethiopia, he wrote another grant to go back to study that monkey-wolf interaction. And I joined him, helped him with the science, but also had this objective to take some better pictures. Took a bunch of photographs, and then we submitted those with the science grant. And that started a very long process. And so the pictures kind of came up at the right time and at the right place with some people inside the society. And then that led to me getting a meeting and then getting to meet other National Geographic explorers that kind of knew how the process worked, because I was totally ignorant. And so it was kind of a mentorship of other explorers and then people within the society helping me find my way to meet various photo editors and things like that. And then, yeah, I essentially showed some of the pictures from that first grant. They said that they weren't good enough, but they had promise, and encouraged me to write another grant, which funded me to go back. And then that, this whole process probably took several years before it came out. But along the way, it's a lot of trial and error and a lot of mentorship from people that are really generous and willing to share their insights.
It's always a much longer process than anyone realizes, I think, for that sort of thing. Yeah. I just want to change tack with one question. COVID has meant that, lots of people have spent some very long, kind of very isolated periods of time, all around the world for the past year. I imagine, the Arctic is a place you've spent a lot of time, the mountains you've talked about. You just said, you lived in a tent for a year. How do you cope with that isolation in any of those places? And is there anything that kind of you've learned from that those people experiencing that around the world could kind of could hear?
Yeah, no, that's a question that I was asked early on in the COVID pandemic by another group I was talking to. But I think my perspective has changed since they asked me that question. And so when I'm going off to work in a place where I won't be seeing many people for a long time, or just a few people for a while, you kind of go into it prepared and kind of excited for that aspect of it. It's like, okay, like this is very different. I'm not going to be well connected, but I'm immersing myself in this other focus. And so whether it's like getting to know the monkeys or studying something in the Arctic, you go into it with open eyes, and it's kind of a positive thing. I mean, yeah, some days you do get really frustrated and lonely, or just you want to eat a taco or something. But the whole COVID thing is a bit different because that just kind of happened and wasn't asking for it. And so initially I was talking about how important it is to have, time to think and to be bored. And these things are all important, but it's really important to be able to socialize and have interactions with other people too. I mean, it's been a tough year in a lot of ways, for me, compared to living in a tent for a year. I just moved to Denmark right when this started, and so I've met a lot of nice people, but it was just unexpected isolation, and I've learned a lot about the contrast of those two things. And yeah, no, it's a tough thing for a lot of people, but hopefully we'll all get through it pretty soon.
Yeah, that's a really astute point. It's different types of isolation, and probably very different types in your different previous trips as well.
Yeah.
I want to get into the tech and the storytelling side of things. But first, if you've just joined us, this is one of 4 conversations that I'm having with National Geographic explorers as part of NI Science Festival. I'm Greg Foote. I'm a science presenter and producer. This is award-winning natural history photographer and research scientist Jeff Kerby. Do go look at the National Geographic website for way more information, discover lots more of these amazing explorers. And it's perhaps worth mentioning as well that they are supported by funding from the National Geographic Society, which is the non-profit side. Okay, back to you then, Jeff. Question before we get to the tech and the storytelling: who inspired you on this path, and who continues to inspire you?
Well, I've gotten a lot of inspiration from my academic mentors, not necessarily in the classroom sense, but just having people that encourage you to ask questions and to be okay with being wrong sometimes. And I think that's been really important along this journey, because like anything that is you're trying to achieve, you're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. And I think learning how to be okay with making mistakes is super important. So yeah, a lot of my various academic mentors help me understand that making mistakes is how you move forward.
Yeah, because you'll make, or one would make probably longer time period mistakes in research, but especially when you are making films, those mistakes can be pretty like instantaneous and quite gutting if you've missed the shot or whatever.
Oh, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. At some point you realize life just goes on. It's like, don't do that again.
What's probably been your most challenging experience to date? If you look back over the places you've been, the stories you've told, the research, the science you've been involved in?
Well, there's the kind of the physical challenges. I've gotten really sick in some places with, different kind of stomach problems. I lost, 35 pounds the 1 year I was in Ethiopia due to a strange virus I got, and all the skin fell off my hands due to some fungus. But that stuff, yeah, I mean, that stuff you just kind of get through. And there's always, it could always be worse. But some of the other challenges are just, kind of like what I was talking about, is being okay with not always succeeding. That's probably the biggest challenge that I see a lot of people facing, is getting discouraged by failing or being afraid to fail. I guess that's more important. So again, learning to be okay with trying hard, not trying to fail, But if you do, then it's like learn something from it and moving on. That's been the hardest thing.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk science. Let's talk tech. Let's get a little bit nerdy if we can. It's great. It's great to speak to someone who's as much into the science as they are into the kind of the creative, the storytelling, the tech side of things. You started to touch on the drones that can see colors, that can see wavelengths that we can't see, and then how that's kind of layered on top and mapped.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more about what that tech is and what that process is?
Totally. So, I mean, the dirty secret with drones is that they're just kind of boring. They're just flying platforms that carry cameras, which are the really interesting things. And so now there's been a miniaturization of all sorts of different types of cameras that we didn't have previously. So what we use to see beyond kind of what the human eyes can see are cameras that see parts of the spectrum that are still, bouncing off energy from the sun. It's just our eyes aren't tuned to see it. So these cameras block out all colors except those very specific colors in the part of the spectrum that tell us the information we want. So you could look in the near infrared part of the spectrum, and that tells you a lot about how chlorophyll is working in plants. Or you could look at really, really narrow slices of the spectrum that some cameras can see, and that can tell you about gases that are in the air. Some of these cameras, can get outrageously expensive, especially those ones that can slice the spectrum into hyperspectral little bits. But others that can see near infrared, or the size of a GoPro, and you can put that in a little drone. And what's really exciting is that that's the same way that satellites work. So they slice the world into these little bits of color that they really focus in on. And so because we can do that with drones now, it gives us kind of a human scale satellite image that then we can bridge up to the stuff that we've been seeing from space that has a lot of other challenges. Like it can get messed up by clouds. It can, it can break when you expect it to work. Big shadows can mess things up. Anyway, like satellites are great, but they're not the solution to everything. Same with drones, but if you have both of them, they can really help out.
Yeah, true. Gosh, that's super cool that NIR, near infrared lets you see kind of chlorophyll activity and which areas of a forest or something are kind of more active or healthier, and that you can see gas exchange. How did you make the topological maps? Was that like a LiDAR, or was that more kind of analyzing the surface?
So, I mean, you could make that same sort of thing with your cell phone camera. All you have to do is take many pictures of the same thing from different angles. And there's kind of like, if you think of this eraser right here, if you look at it right now through the camera, it looks like it's about this big. But if you move it this close to the camera, all of a sudden it's twice as big as it looks right now. But my head size didn't change, hopefully. And so what a camera or this computer software can do is figure out, okay, if you move things around, some things change size more than others just due to distortion or due to something called parallax error. And then it uses simple geometry, which is what computers are great at doing, millions and millions and millions of times over and over again, to figure out the angles between things and then make a guess of what it looks like in 3D. So people like mathematicians figured out all of the science for this a long, long time ago, but now computers have just made it so, I mean, you could make that in just a few minutes with a cell phone. It's crazy.
It's phenomenal, isn't it? And then on top of that, you can add the machine learning, which presumably, I mean, you were talking about it in the context of the counting of the seal pups, but is that kind of like teaching the first level, teach the computer what a seal pup looks like, and then it learns through further kind of analysis? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so I was talking to the researchers that were doing that, and it was in the process of how they were prepping the data. And so what their question is this a seal or is it not a seal? I mean, it's a very simple question that, you or I could answer that question, but if we had to answer it 50,000 times and we did 1 per second, I mean, we're approaching what, like 14 hours or something at that point.
But
so
they also look a lot like a brown rock.
Yeah, exactly. It actually might be harder than it looks. So what they do is they make an example set where they'll circle a bunch of seals that they've checked, and then they feed that into an algorithm using machine learning or neural networks or something, and it learns how to match the yeses and the nos that were in the training data. And then once it gets really good at that, you can set it loose on data and images that you didn't train it on. And that's where it becomes really, really valuable. And then you check to see, did it do a good job, or was it just actually counting a bunch of brown rocks? And then you train a little bit more data, and then you set it loose again. And this process goes back and forth. And in the end, yeah, you save yourself a lot of time.
It's brilliant. It's so, so powerful. What else is powerful is what you touched on about using these tools and techniques of combining research with videography, but then to tell stories and to tell stories of the changing permafrost or the communities. Do you think that's the most rewarding aspect to all of this?
Oh, absolutely. It's because it touches on some of the fundamental reasons why we're doing it, and it's to understand and to share that knowledge. And it can be really frustrating, either as a scientist or as a photographer, when you feel stuck in your discipline, where it's like you're only talking to other photographers or you're only talking to other scientists. And this is such a visual way to be able to connect those two and to talk to anybody about it, that it just shows a lot of promise. And it wasn't something that we had initially even planned to do. We just saw the value in it as things have moved forward. And I guess that's why I brought up, there's this new project that we're starting with National Geographic Society support. They've funded this collaborative project where I'm one team member combining with a couple other explorers that are focused on the science, like my colleague Isla that was in one of those pictures. But also photographers and virtual reality kind of specialists and people from the local community that have a knowledge that we'll never have. And so by bringing this kind of group together, I think we can just create something that is really exciting and really new, that is useful for many different ways to have important conversations.
Yeah, I can't wait to see those projects.
Yeah, it's early days, so I don't know. Hopefully it goes well.
Okay, yeah, it's amazing because it's kind of taking what you've been doing, a lot of the other explorers have been doing with the crossover of those different worlds, but then adding in further tech like VR and things like that to innovate the storytelling process further. That's really exciting.
It's great because it's also an accessibility thing too. Getting to some of these places takes tens of thousands of dollars. It's really expensive to go there. And that's just not necessarily a reasonable thing to expect everyone to be able to do. And so if you can share some sort of immersive experience that gives a sense of scale, like I put that football pitch on top of the permafrost, like being able to just sense that teaches you so much more, or allows you to make better decisions based on something than if you just saw kind of a picture of it. And so
I think, sorry, Jeff, go on, carry on.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was going to say, it's more than just the experience of it as well, because it is the opportunity to experience it when you wouldn't normally be able to, but it's, as you said, it's what that can then affect in your life. So, a lot of your images, your videography, the research, it can all not only inspire and show people aspects of the world they haven't seen before, but it's really powerful to empower people to make decisions to protect nature and protect the world, because you're showing them the state of it.
Yeah, and I mean that's the hope. And yeah, we're learning how to do a better job with that as we go. We keep trying to get better at it. And part of it is getting at one of the most difficult challenges that scientists face, and that's this notion of scale. And so when you know that, say, little plants are ultimately what's causing this huge greening pattern that we're seeing from satellites, how do you connect those two things? It's just our human brain doesn't work very well when we have to go from really little to really big and then fill in the gaps in between. And so any tool that we can come up with that allows us to kind of get a sense or to get that feeling of how things work is a really valuable asset to have next to a graph or next to a picture. It's not going to replace those things, but it can allow people to understand things in a way that has them make better decisions, whether it's policy or what.
Okay, so 2 questions I'm going to try to squeeze in before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, what is the one thing that anybody watching this could do to protect nature, to protect those incredible places that you visited and experienced for themselves and for future generations?
Well, so everything comes down to decisions. And as individuals, we have an opportunity to make decisions about our individual lifestyles and how we make use of resources and things like that. But we also have a power to vote and to hold other people accountable for decisions that maybe are made up at a higher government level. And the two of those don't exist separately. And while it's important to, make individual decisions to shape your own life, I feel like it's really important to hold those that are making the decisions accountable for them, because in a numbers game, that's where the biggest changes need to happen and the biggest decisions are made. So let's lead by example, but understand that the biggest changes will happen by holding those that are making policy to a high standard.
Make your voice heard and vote.
Yeah.
Okay, here's my last question then. This is more the inspirational question, and it's thinking about those people that I was kind of referring to earlier, you lot watching, who are inspired by what Jeff and the teams that he've worked with have done. They've told these amazing stories. Jeff, what would be your top tips? Let's say 3 top tips for anyone watching who wants to either enter this field or wants to be involved in telling stories about science and the world.
All right, 3 top tips. 1, digital photography is a great way to learn because you can just delete stuff that is really bad. I don't know how I would have learned how to take pictures in the analog era nearly as quickly because you can just keep trying. So yeah, iterate, try things over and over again. And then a second thing is that you don't need to go to far-flung places to explore or to get inspired by stuff. During the lockdown, I've had more fun like trying to figure out weird macro photography or like new techniques on my house plants, or like growing roots in like clear jars to make some cool aesthetics happen that they tickle the same emotions. So it's like you don't have to go to the Kuril Islands to experience exploration of the natural world. And then 3, in terms of following a certain career path is, just think about what you're after, set goals, and keep adjusting those goals as you learn more and more about it. So you're probably not going to end up where you initially thought you might, but that can be a good thing. And maybe that's something that we all should think of more often.
Follow your passions. The passions can change.
Yeah.
And just get stuck in.
Yeah, just give it a go.
Yeah. Jeff, thanks so much. Absolutely fascinating. Love your work. It's beautiful. It's moving. It's inspiring. It's all that, and I can't wait to see that future project that you're working on.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to be working with such a team like that, and together we're gonna try to make some cool stuff. So thanks so much, Greg.
Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it. And thank you for joining me for this second conversation in the National Geographic Explorer series for NI Science Festival. If you want to learn some more tips for how to be a better storyteller, then do look at the National Geographic Storytelling for Impact course, and do visit the National Geographic Society website to meet lots of the other awesome explorers there as well. The NI Science Festival has 11 days of packed events. There are talks, there are workshops, there are shows. Over 250 going on, so do go check out the website and the NI SciFest social handles as well. I've got the pleasure of speaking to two more brilliant explorers in this series. You can watch the next one on Monday, that's 22nd of February at 7 p.m, where I'll be chatting with TV presenter and wildlife filmmaker Malaika Vaz. I'll see you then. Bye.